The rain hadn't stopped since we lowered Dad into the ground 48 hours ago. It was a gray, relentless drizzle that seemed to seep into the very bones of the Eastwood Manor, making the old oak floorboards groan under the weight of the humidity. I was standing in the kitchen, staring into a black trash bag that was already bursting at the seams. 400 guests. That was how many people Sloane had insisted on inviting. 400 people to drink cheap wine and eat catered sandwiches in a house that was technically drowning in debt, though only one person in the room knew that. And that person was me. My hands were raw. I had been scrubbing countertops, collecting discarded red plastic cups from the rose bushes, and vacuuming mud out of the carpets since 5 in the morning. I looked down at my fingers. My nails were cut short, practical, the skin around the cuticles dry and cracking. I hadn't had a manicure in 6 years. Not since the day I took over the family finances. I picked up my mug of coffee. It was stone cold. I had poured it 2 hours ago, intending to sit down for just 5 minutes, but then the florist called about picking up the vases, and the catering company needed a check, and Mom had a panic attack about her black veil being missing. So, the coffee sat there, dying a slow death, just like my patients. The swinging door to the kitchen flew open. It didn't just open, it slammed against the wall, vibrating the spice rack. Sloane walked in. My sister was 32 years old, 15 years my junior, and she looked like she had just stepped out of a magazine shoot. Despite the somber occasion of the week, she was wearing a silk robe that I knew cost more than my car insurance for the year. Her hair was perfectly blown out, blonde and bouncy, and her face was fresh, dewy, and completely rested. She didn't look at me. She never really looked at me. She looked past me, treating me like a piece of furniture that had been placed inconveniently in her path. God, it smells like wet dog in here, she announced, wrinkling her nose. She walked to the refrigerator, opened it, and frowned. Meredith, where's the almond milk? I specifically asked for the unsweetened vanilla kind. I tightened my grip on the trash bag. We ran out, Sloane. The cousins from Ohio used it all for their cereal this morning. Well, go get more, she said, pulling out a bottle of sparkling water instead. She took a sip and leaned against the granite island, finally deigning to glance in my direction. Her eyes scanned my baggy gray sweatshirt and the messy bun on top of my head. A small, pitying smile played on her lips. And maybe shower? You look like you've been digging ditches. I've been cleaning up after your party, Sloane, I said, my voice low. The wake. You wanted the wake here, remember? Instead of the funeral home? It's Dad's house, she shrugged. It was only right. She took a step forward and her slipper caught on the edge of the trash bag I had just tied up. Instead of stepping over it, she kicked it. Hard. The plastic tore. A stream of stale beer and soggy napkins spilled out onto the floor I had just mopped. I stared at the mess. I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. Oops, she said, with zero sincerity. You shouldn't leave trash in the middle of the walkway. It's a hazard. She turned to leave, her silk robe swishing behind her. Oh, and Chad is waking up soon. He wants eggs. Benedict, if you can manage it. Don't overcook the yolks like last time. Sloane, I called out. She stopped at the door, looking back over her shoulder, annoyed. What? Dad isn't even cold yet, I said. Could you maybe help? Just a little? Mom is a wreck, and there are still boxes of files in the study that need sorting. Sloane laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound. Help? Meredith, darling, that's why you're here. You're the practical one. The sturdy one. I'm here to provide emotional support for Mom. We have different roles. We always have. She gestured vaguely at the kitchen, at the spilled trash, at me. You handle the mess. I handle the legacy. Then she walked out, leaving me alone with the cold coffee and the smell of stale beer. She thought she was the princess of the castle. She thought this was her kingdom now. She had no idea that the castle was built on a foundation of sand, and I was the only thing keeping the tide from washing it all away. I grabbed the mop bucket. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just started cleaning. Again. Because that's what Meredith does. Meredith cleans up the mess. But as I wrung out the mop head, twisting the gray water into the bucket, I looked at the dark liquid swirling down the drain. Legacy, she said. If only she knew what that legacy actually cost. Dinner that evening was a suffocating affair. The dining room was vast, with a mahogany table that could seat 12, but tonight it was just 4 of us huddled at one end, surrounded by shadows. Mom sat at the head of the table. Beatrice Bennett was 70 years old, a woman who had spent her entire life being taken care of, first by her father, then by my father, and for the last decade, secretly, by me. She looked small in the big chair, her eyes red-rimmed, picking at her roast chicken. Sloane sat to her right. Chad, her fiancé, sat next to Sloane. Chad was a man who described himself as an entrepreneur, which, as far as I could tell, meant he had a lot of ideas and a lot of debt. He was 35, wore loafers with no socks, and was currently vaping at the dinner table, blowing clouds of mint-scented vapor toward the antique chandelier. So, Chad said, breaking the silence. He gestured with his fork. This place has good bones. Great bones, actually. But the layout? A nightmare. Total nightmare. I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. Excuse me? The flow, Chad continued, oblivious to the temperature drop in the room. It's all chopped up. Like that study off the main hall? Dark, gloomy. Waste of square footage. You knock that wall down, open it up to the living room, add some floor-to-ceiling glass? Boom. Modern farmhouse vibe. You could double the resale value. My stomach turned. The study. That was Dad's sanctuary. That was where he taught me to play chess. That was where I had sat with him 3 nights ago, holding his hand as he took his last breath. We aren't knocking down any walls, Chad, I said, my voice steady but cold. It's a historic estate. And the study stays as it is. Sloane placed a manicured hand on Chad's arm, a gesture of solidarity that made my skin crawl. Actually, Meredith, Chad has a point. We were talking about it this afternoon. If we're going to live here, we need to make it livable. It feels like a museum right now. A dusty, depressing museum. I set my fork down. The clatter of silver on china echoed loudly. If we are going to live here? Sloane, you live in Los Angeles. You have an apartment. Had, she corrected, sipping her wine. A bottle of vintage Cabernet she had pulled from Dad's cellar without asking. A bottle he was saving for his 50th anniversary. We gave up the lease. We're moving back. To take care of Mom. I looked at Mom. She was staring at her plate, avoiding my eyes. Mom? I asked. Did you know about this? Beatrice took a shaky breath. She finally looked up, her eyes watery and weak. It's lonely here, Meredith. The house is so big. And you, well, you're always so busy with your work. You're always in your room or out running errands. Sloane and Chad, they bring life. They bring energy. Energy? I repeated, feeling a tightness in my chest. Mom, I have lived here for 7 years. I moved in when Dad got sick. I cooked every meal. I drove him to every chemo appointment. I manage the grounds. I pay the bills. And we appreciate that, darling, Mom said, reaching out to pat my hand, but pulling back before she actually touched me. But Sloane is family too. And she's getting married. She needs a home to start her family. Dad would have wanted the house to be full of children and laughter. And where do I fit into this full house? I asked. I already knew the answer. I could see it in the way Sloane was smirking into her wine glass. Well, Sloane interjected, we were thinking. The carriage house. You know, the little guest cottage by the stables? It's cute. Private. It would be perfect for you. You like your privacy, right? Plus, Chad and I will need the master suite, and we'll need the other bedrooms for guests and, eventually, a nursery. They were evicting me. Not just from my room, but from my life. They were banishing me to the servants' quarters on my own property. You want me to move into the shed, I said flatly. It's a cottage, Chad corrected. And honestly, Meredith, you should be grateful. Most sisters wouldn't be cool with a 47-year-old spinster living down the hall from their newlyweds' bedroom. It's a bit weird. I looked at Mom again. This was the moment. This was the moment she was supposed to say, no, Meredith is the rock of this family. Meredith stays where she is. Meredith, Mom said softly. It makes sense. You're single. You don't need all this space. Let your sister have this. She's finally settling down. You have your solitary life. You're strong. You can adapt. The betrayal hit me harder than the grief. You have your solitary life. As if my solitude was a choice, and not a byproduct of spending my 30s and 40s digging them out of financial ruin. I looked at Sloane. She was beaming, victorious. She had the fiancé, the hair, the mother's love, and now, she thought she had the house. I see, I said. I picked up my napkin and dabbed my mouth. So, the renovation starts when? Monday, Sloane said eagerly. I've already called a contractor to come look at that study wall. Monday, I repeated. Good to know. I stood up. I didn't clear my plate. For the first time in 7 years, I left my dishes on the table. I'm going to bed, I said. Don't forget to take the trash out on your way. Sloane called after me. I walked out of the dining room, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. They wanted the house. They wanted the master suite. They wanted to tear down Dad's study. They had no idea that the only reason the lights were on, the only reason the wine was in the cellar, and the only reason there was a roof over their heads at all, was because of the spinster they had just dismissed. I climbed the stairs to my room. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to the rain, and I started to count. Not sheep. I counted assets. I counted debts. And I counted the days until Monday. The explosion happened 2 days later, on a Saturday morning. I had gone into town to meet with the estate lawyer, Elias, to review some paperwork, as I told Mom. When I returned, the driveway was full of cars. Not construction trucks, but luxury sedans and sports cars. Sloane was throwing a post-funeral brunch, which seemed to be just an excuse to drink mimosas and show off the estate to her friends from the city. I parked my 10-year-old Ford pickup truck behind a gleaming white Porsche. I walked into the house, clutching my leather portfolio tight against my chest. The music was loud. Too loud. People I didn't know were wandering through the hallway with champagne flutes. I made my way to the living room and froze. My grandmother's antique silver tea set, the one that had been in the family for 4 generations, was gone from the display cabinet. The cabinet doors were wide open. I walked straight to the patio where Sloane was holding court, laughing with a group of women who all looked like clones of her. "Where is the silver?" I asked. I didn't raise my voice, but the temperature on the patio seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sloane turned, annoyed at the interruption. "Hello to you too, Meredith. We're having guests." "The Victorian tea set," I said, stepping closer. "And the oil painting that was in the hallway. Where are they?" Sloane rolled her eyes and took a sip of her drink. "I sold them." The air left my lungs. You what?" "I listed them on eBay and a local antique dealer picked them up this morning," she said casually, as if she were talking about selling old clothes. "We need cash, Meredith. Chad's vision for the renovation is expensive, and Dad didn't exactly leave us a fortune in liquid assets." I'm just being resourceful. Cleaning out the junk. Junk? My voice shook. That silver was Grandma's. She promised it to me. Well, she's dead, and Dad's dead, Sloane snapped, her mask of civility finally slipping in front of her friends. And Mom signed over power of attorney for the household goods to me yesterday. She agrees with me. We need to modernize. Out with the old, in with the new. She stood up, towering over me in her heels. And speaking of out, we need to talk about your timeline. Chad and I need you out of the main house by tonight. We have designers coming tomorrow, and I don't want your clutter in the way. Tonight? I whispered. Yes. Tonight, Sloane hissed. Get out, Meredith. Just get out. Go to the carriage house, go to a hotel, I don't care. But get out of my house. The guests were watching. Mom was watching from the kitchen window, doing nothing. Chad was smirking by the bar. Your house, I repeated. My house, she confirmed. Mom signed the transfer of occupancy this morning. It's done. You're just a guest who has overstayed her welcome. Something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a hot, fiery snap. It was a cold, metallic click. Like the locking of a vault. I looked at Sloane. I looked at the house I had saved from foreclosure 10 years ago. I looked at the roof I had paid to replace. I looked at the land I had fought to keep. Okay, I said. Sloane blinked. She expected a fight. She expected tears. She didn't expect surrender. Okay? You want me to leave? I'll leave. I reached to my belt loop and unclipped my heavy ring of keys. The front door key. The back gate key. The garage key. The key to the wine cellar. I held them up. They jingled softly in the silence. You win, Sloane, I said. It's all yours. The house. The bills. The renovation. The legacy. I dropped the keys onto the glass patio table. Clink. Tell Mom I said goodbye, I said. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't go upstairs to get my clothes. I turned around and walked back through the house, past the strangers drinking my wine, past the empty spot on the wall where the painting used to be. I walked out the front door and got into my truck. I started the engine. As I reversed down the driveway, I saw Sloane in the rearview mirror, raising her glass in a toast, laughing. She thought she had just won the lottery. I reached for my phone and dialed a number. Elias? I said when the voice answered. Meredith? Is everything all right? No, I said, staring at the mansion in my rearview mirror. They kicked me out. Activate the clause. Prepare the eviction notice. Are you sure? Elias asked. Once we start this, there is no going back. It's the nuclear option. I watched Sloane take another sip of champagne. I'm sure, I said. Burn it down. I drove away into the rain, leaving my home behind, knowing that when I returned, I wouldn't be coming back as a sister. I would be coming back as the landlord. The Motel 6 on the outskirts of town was a far cry from the Eastwood Manor. The carpet was sticky, the air smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner, and the neon sign outside buzzed with a rhythmic, headache-inducing flicker. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, staring at the peeling beige wallpaper. It was 2 a.m. on Sunday. I hadn't slept. My laptop was open on the small, scratched desk. The screen glowed blue in the dark room, illuminating the only thing I had brought with me besides a change of clothes, a thick, black binder labeled MB Holdings, Master File. I opened the binder. The first page wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a photo. It was a picture of me, 10 years younger, smiling. I was wearing a white dress, standing next to a man named Mark. We were engaged. We were happy. We had a plan. We were going to buy a small house in the city, travel to Greece for our honeymoon, and start a life that didn't involve fixing leaky roofs or managing my parents' credit card debt. I ran my thumb over Mark's face. I remembered the phone call that ended it all. It was a Tuesday. Dad was crying on the other end of the line. The bank was foreclosing on the estate. They were 30 days away from the sheriff locking the gates. Mom was hysterical, talking about where she would put her grand piano if they moved to a condo. "We have nowhere to go, Meredith," Dad had sobbed. "We'll lose everything. The legacy. Your grandfather's land." I had a choice. I could have hung up. I could have said, "That sounds like a you problem." I could have married Mark and gone to Greece. Instead, I liquidated my 401k. I emptied the savings account Mark and I had built for our down payment. I sold the engagement ring. Mark didn't understand. "You're choosing a pile of bricks over us," he had said, packing his bags. "You're setting yourself on fire to keep them warm, Meredith. And they won't even thank you for the heat." He was right. They didn't. I turned the page of the binder. There it was. The purchase agreement. 10 years ago, I didn't just pay off their debt. I bought the debt. I formed an LLC, bought the note from the bank for pennies on the dollar because the market had crashed, and I became the bank. My parents didn't even read the fine print. They were just so relieved to keep the house that they signed whatever papers the lawyer put in front of them. They thought I had just handled it. They thought I was paying rent. They had no idea that for the last decade, they had been living in my house, eating my food, and sleeping under my roof, while treating me like an unpaid intern. I looked at the screen of my laptop. I logged into the bank portal for the family trust. Balance, $740,000. This was money I had aggressively invested over the last decade. Money from my actual job as a supply chain consultant, a job they thought was just fiddling on the computer. This was the money that paid for the heating, the taxes, the insurance, and Sloane's monthly allowance that Mom secretly funneled to her. I scrolled down to the credit card activity. Saturday, 4:15 p.m., the Tipsy Grape Liquor Store, $450 Saturday, 6:30 p.m., Elite Catering, $2,500 Sunday, 9 a.m., Luxury Linens and Things, $1,200. Sloane was burning through cash she didn't have, on cards that were linked to my credit score. Mark's voice echoed in my head. "They won't even thank you for the heat." I closed the binder. The sadness that had been weighing on my chest for the last 48 hours began to evaporate. In its place, a cold, hard resolve settled in. I wasn't the victim here. I was the landlord. And my tenants had just violated the lease. Monday morning came with a thunderstorm. I drove to downtown, parking my truck in the garage beneath the glass and steel tower where Elias Blackwood had his law offices. Elias was 70, with hair like white wool and eyes that missed nothing. He had been my grandfather's lawyer, my father's lawyer, and now, my only ally. I walked into his office. He was already standing by the window, looking out at the rain. On his desk, a stack of documents sat ready. "Meredith," he said, turning around. He didn't smile. He looked furious. "I heard." "News travels fast," I said, sitting down in the leather chair opposite his desk. "Small town," Elias grunted. "Your sister tried to list the property with a realtor this morning. The realtor called me because my name is on the title search." I raised an eyebrow. "What did you tell them?" "I told them that if they listed a property they didn't have the deed to, I would sue them into the Stone Age," Elias said, sitting down. He pushed the stack of papers toward me. "She has no idea, does she? She thinks Mom owns it. She thinks Mom signed it over to her on a napkin or some LegalZoom template they downloaded." Elias snorted. "Your mother has life tenancy rights. Meaning she can live there until she dies, provided she maintains the property and doesn't attempt to sell, transfer, or encumber the estate. That was the deal we made when you bailed them out." He opened the folder. "By signing a document attempting to transfer the title to Sloane, Your mother violated Clause 4, Section B of the Life Tenancy Agreement. The attempt to alienate title clause. Which means? I asked, though I knew the answer. Which means, Elias said, looking me dead in the eye, the life tenancy is void. Immediately. The property reverts to full possession of the trustee. You can kick them all out. Today. Legally. I ran my hand over the paper. It was a weapon. A piece of paper that could destroy my family. And Dad? I asked quietly. Did he know it would come to this? Elias hesitated. He opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a white envelope. It was sealed with wax. My name was written on it in shaky handwriting. He gave this to me 3 months ago, Elias said softly. When the cancer got bad. He made me promise to give it to you only if things got difficult. I took the envelope. My hands trembled. I tore it open. My dearest Meredith, if you are reading this, I am gone, and I have failed you. I was a weak man, Mary. I couldn't say no to your mother, and I couldn't say no to Sloane. I watched you sacrifice your happiness, your marriage, and your youth to fix my mistakes, and I never stood up for you. I let them treat you like a servant in your own kingdom. I know Sloane. I know she will come for the house. She sees it as a piggy bank, not a home. Don't let her take it. You earned it. You bought it. It is yours. Forgive me for not being strong enough to say this while I was alive. Love, Dad. I put the letter down. A single tear fell onto the mahogany desk. I wiped it away instantly. Dad knew, I whispered. He knew they would do this. He did, Elias said. So, Meredith. What do you want to do? We can file an injunction, drag it out in court, be nice. I looked at the letter. I looked at the eviction notice Elias had drafted. No, I said. No injunctions. I want full execution. Serve them. Tomorrow morning. Elias nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. I'll call the sheriff. We'll need a civil standby. I spent the rest of Monday in the motel room, glued to my iPad. 7 years ago, I had installed a comprehensive security system in the manor. Cameras at the gate, cameras on the porch, cameras in the hallway, cameras overlooking the garden. I told Mom it was for burglars. In reality, it was because I didn't trust the people coming in and out of the house. Now, it was my window into the chaos I had left behind. On the screen, I watched Sloane pacing around the living room. She was on the phone, looking frantic. The house was a mess. There were takeout boxes piled on the coffee table, pizza boxes, Thai food containers. Without me there to cook and clean, the glamorous lifestyle was degrading into squalor rapidly. Mom was sitting in her armchair, staring blankly at the TV. She looked smaller than she had 2 days ago. Then, I switched to the garden cam. My breath hitched. A white pickup truck with Sully's Demolition painted on the side was parked on the lawn, my lawn. 2 men were standing near the gazebo. That gazebo wasn't just wood. I had built it myself over a summer 3 years ago. I had sanded every beam, painted every lattice. It was where I drank my morning coffee. It was the one place in the house that felt entirely mine. I watched, helpless, as Sloane walked out to the men. She pointed at the gazebo and made a cut-it motion with her hand. She was holding a glass of wine. One of the men started a chainsaw. I watched in silence as the blade bit into the white wood. I saw the lattice shatter. I saw the roof collapse. Sloane clapped her hands. She was laughing. She was destroying the only thing I had built for myself, probably to make room for some tacky hot tub or lounge area for her friends. That was it. The last shred of guilt I felt about what I was about to do evaporated. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Elias. Paperwork filed. Sheriff secured for 0800 hours tomorrow. Are we green? I looked at the screen one last time. I watched Sloane toast with Chad over the ruins of my gazebo. I typed back, green. Burn it all down. I closed the iPad. I went to the small motel bathroom and took a shower. I washed off the motel smell. I washed off the grief. I shaved my legs. I blow-dried my hair until it was straight and sleek. I opened my suitcase and pulled out the suit I had bought for a board meeting in New York last year. It was a tailored, navy blue power suit. Sharp shoulders. Crisp white shirt. I wasn't going back as the daughter. I wasn't going back as the sister. I was going back as the CEO of MB Holdings. And I was about to fire my worst employees. If you are enjoying this story of justice and revenge, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, comment down below with the name of the city you are watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more people who need to see karma in action. Thank you so much. Tuesday morning was crisp and clear. The storm had passed, leaving the sky a brilliant, unforgiving blue. At exactly 7:55 a.m., I turned my rental car, a sleek black sedan, onto the long gravel driveway of the Eastwood Manor. Behind me was Elias's vintage Mercedes, and behind him was a sheriff's department cruiser, lights off but presence undeniable. We formed a silent convoy, crunching over the gravel. As we approached the house, the destruction was even more evident than it had been on the camera. The lawn, usually manicured to perfection by my own hands, was rutted with tire tracks from the demolition truck. The remains of my gazebo lay in a heap of splintered wood and twisted metal, like a carcass left to rot. I parked right in front of the main entrance, blocking Sloane's convertible. I stepped out of the car. The morning air was cold. I smoothed down my blazer, adjusted my sunglasses, and waited. Elias stepped out, clutching his briefcase like a shield. Two uniformed deputies got out of the cruiser, adjusting their belts. "Ready?" Elias asked. "Ready," I said. I didn't use my key. I rang the doorbell. Once. Twice. Long, insistent rings. It took 3 minutes. Finally, the door swung open. It was Chad. He looked like he had been run over by a truck. He was wearing just boxer shorts and a t-shirt that said Vibes. His hair was a mess, and his eyes were bloodshot. "Who the hell is ringing the bell at 8 in the..." He trailed off as his eyes adjusted to the sunlight. He saw me. Then he saw the suit. Then he saw the deputies. His face went pale. "Meredith," he stammered. Is Dad okay?" "I mean, wait, Dad's dead." "What's going on? Are the cops here?" "Good morning, Chad," I said, my voice pleasant and terrifyingly calm. "Is Sloane awake?" "We have a meeting." "She's sleeping," Chad said, trying to block the door with his skinny frame. "Look, you can't just bring cops here. We're grieving." "Step aside, son," one of the deputies said, his hand resting on his belt. It wasn't a request. Chad scrambled back, nearly tripping over the foyer rug. We stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Stale champagne, old pizza, and something rotting in the trash. My beautiful foyer was cluttered with Amazon boxes and shopping bags. "Sloane," I called out. My voice echoed up the grand staircase. "Sloane Bennett. Get down here." I heard a thud from upstairs, then angry footsteps. Sloane appeared at the top of the stairs. She was wrapped in a duvet, her makeup smeared from the night before. "What is this?" she screeched. "Meredith? Why are there police in my house? Did you call the cops on me for selling the silver?" "You petty little..." "Come downstairs, Sloane," I interrupted. "And wake Mom up. We're doing this once." She stomped down the stairs, fury radiating off her. Mom appeared a moment later, looking frail and confused in her nightgown, clutching the banister. They gathered in the living room. Sloane stood with her arms crossed, defiant. Mom sat on the sofa, trembling. Chad hovered by the window, looking like he wanted to jump out of it. You have 5 minutes to explain why you're trespassing, Sloane spat at me. Before I call my lawyer and have you arrested for harassment. I looked at Elias. I nodded. The floor is yours, counselor, I said. Elias stepped forward. He didn't sit. He placed his briefcase on the coffee table, right on top of a greasy pizza box, and snapped the latches open. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Miss Sloane Bennett, Elias began, his voice deep and resonant. Mrs. Beatrice Bennett. We are here to serve you with an immediate notice to vacate. Sloane laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. Vacate? You can't evict us. Mom owns this house. She invited me to live here. She signed the transfer papers 2 days ago. Ah, yes, Elias said, pulling a document from his briefcase. The transfer papers. We have a copy of what you filed with the county clerk. He held it up. Unfortunately, you cannot transfer what you do not own. What are you talking about? Mom spoke up, her voice wavering. Beatrice Bennett. It's on the mailbox. It's my house. Richard and I bought it 40 years ago. You did, Elias said gently. And 10 years ago, when the bank was foreclosing on it, you sold it. The room went deadly silent. You sold the debt, and the deed, to a company called Phoenix Real Estate LLC to avoid bankruptcy, Elias explained. You signed a deed in lieu of foreclosure. In exchange, the LLC granted you lifetime tenancy rights, provided you paid the utilities and taxes, which you haven't. The LLC has paid them. Who is Phoenix Real Estate? Sloane demanded. Some bank? We can sue them. Predatory lending. Elias smiled. It was a shark smile. Phoenix Real Estate LLC is a single-member holding company, Elias said. He turned and pointed a finger at me. The sole owner and managing member is Meredith Bennett. Sloane's jaw dropped. She looked at me, eyes wide. You? Me, I said. I stepped forward, picking up the deed Elias had laid on the table. I bought the debt, Sloane. I paid off the $300,000 Mom and Dad owed. I paid the property taxes for 10 years. I paid for the new roof. I paid for the heater you complain about. I looked at Mom. She was weeping silently, her hand over her mouth. I let you think you still owned it, I said to Mom, my voice cracking slightly. Because Dad begged me to. He wanted you to keep your dignity. He didn't want the town to know you were broke. So I let you play the lady of the manor while I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for it. I turned back to Sloane. But the tenancy agreement had one clause. Clause 4. If the tenant attempts to sell or transfer the property, the tenancy is void. Immediately. I dropped the deed onto the table. You tried to steal my house, Sloane. And in doing so, you triggered the eviction clause. You didn't just kick yourself out. You kicked Mom out too. No, Sloane whispered. No, this is a lie. You're lying. You're just a secretary. You don't have that kind of money. I'm a senior consultant for a global logistics firm, I corrected her. And unlike you, I don't spend money I don't have. Sloane lunged for the papers. Give me that. The deputy stepped in between us, his hand on his taser. Ma'am, step back. Sloane recoiled. She looked at Chad. Do something. Chad looked at the floor. Babe, if she owns the deed, she owns the deed. It's over. It's not over. Sloane screamed. We have rights. Squatters' rights. You've been here 4 days, I said coldly. You're a guest. And your invitation is revoked. Sloane was panting, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. She realized the house tactic wasn't working, so she switched to the only other thing she cared about. Fine, she spat. Keep the damn house. It's a dump anyway. We'll go to a hotel. Come on, Chad. We'll book the penthouse at the Four Seasons. Mom, you come with us. We'll sue her later. She grabbed her purse and pulled out her phone. I'm booking it now, she announced, tapping furiously on the screen. I stood perfectly still, watching her. About that, I said. Sloane froze. She stared at her phone. Her brow furrowed. She tapped again. What is wrong with this stupid app, she muttered. Card declined? That's impossible. It's the Black Amex. The Black Amex linked to the family trust? I asked. Sloane looked up slowly. The color drained from her face completely this time. It wasn't just pale, it was gray. The family trust, I continued, which was set up to manage the estate's expenses. The trust that I fund. Every month. I pulled out my own phone. I opened the banking app and held it up for her to see. Account status, frozen. Cards, cancelled. I cut you off, Sloane, I said. 5 minutes ago. The credit cards? Cancelled. The lease on your BMW? I stopped the autopay. The wedding planner? I emailed them this morning to let them know the check is going to bounce. You can't do that, Sloane stammered. Her voice was small now. Broken. That's my money. Dad left that for us. Dad died with $40 in his checking account, I said brutally. Every latte you drank, every dress you bought, every vacation you took in the last 10 years. I paid for it. Me. The sister you treat like garbage. The sister you kicked out. I took a step closer to her. I was happy to do it, I whispered. Because I loved you. I wanted you to have the life I didn't get. But you didn't just take the money, Sloane. You took my home. You insulted my dignity. You destroyed my gazebo. I pointed to the door. You have $0. You have zero house. You have zero car. And you have exactly 1 hour to pack your bags and get off my property before the sheriff arrests you for trespassing. Sloane looked at Chad. Chad, give me your card. We need to book the hotel. Chad backed away. He looked from Sloane to me, calculating the odds. Sloane, Chad said, rubbing the back of his neck. I think I should go. My mom, she's expecting me. What? Sloane shrieked. You're leaving me? Now? I can't be involved in this, babe. Legal drama? Bad for my brand. Chad grabbed his car keys off the table. Good luck, though. He bolted out the door. We heard his car engine roar to life and gravel spray as he sped away. Sloane stood alone in the center of the room. Stripped of her house, her money, her fiancé, and her pride. She looked at Mom. Mom. Tell her to stop. Mom looked up. For the first time in years, she looked at me with clarity. She saw the suit. She saw the deed. She saw the daughter who had saved her, and the daughter who had just tried to sell her out. I can't, Mom whispered. It's not my house, Sloane. It's Meredith's. The next hour was a blur of chaotic motion. Under the watchful eyes of the deputies, Sloane threw clothes into suitcases. She didn't fold anything. She just shoved silk and cashmere into bags, sobbing loudly the entire time. I stepped out onto the back porch to get some air. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion. I heard the sliding door open behind me. It was Mom. She walked slowly, leaning on her cane. She stood next to me, looking out at the ruined gazebo. You really own it all? She asked softly. Since 2014, I said, not looking at her. The day you called me crying about the foreclosure notice. I thought your father handled it with his pension. Dad didn't have a pension, Mom. He cashed it out in '98 to pay for Sloane's private school tuition. Don't you remember? Mom closed her eyes. I suppose I chose not to remember. She turned to me. Tears were streaming down her face. Meredith, please. She's your sister. She has nowhere to go. Chad left her. She has no money. Can't we give her the carriage house? Just until she gets back on her feet? I gripped the railing of the porch. My knuckles turned white. Even now. Even after everything. She was still asking me to sacrifice for Sloane. No, I said. Meredith, have a heart. I had a heart. I shouted, spinning around to face her. It was the first time I had raised my voice at my mother since I was a teenager. I had a heart, Mom. I had a fiancé. I had a life. I gave it all up to buy this roof over your head. And what did I get? You sat at that dinner table 2 nights ago and told me to move into the shed. You watched her kick me out and you said nothing. Mom flinched as if I had slapped her. You picked her, I said, my voice trembling with 10 years of suppressed hurt. You always pick her. Because she's the shiny one. The loud one. And I'm just the engine room. I'm just the utility bill. That's not true, Mom sobbed. It is true. But it stops today. I took a deep breath, smoothing my blazer. Here is the new deal, Mom. You can stay. This is your home. I will never kick you out. I will pay for your food, your medicine, and your care. But Sloane goes. She needs to learn how to survive in the real world. If you give her $1 of the grocery money I give you, I will know. And if you try to sneak her back in, I will change the locks. Mom stared at me. She looked terrified. She was seeing a stranger. A stranger she had created. She's my baby, Mom whispered. She's 32 years old, I said. She's not a baby. She's a parasite. And I'm done feeding her. I turned back to the yard. Go say goodbye to her, Mom. Because she's leaving. I walked around to the front of the house just as Sloane was dragging her Louis Vuitton trunks down the steps. One of the wheels broke on the gravel, and the heavy case tipped over. She screamed in frustration and kicked the bag. The deputy watched her, impassive. Do you need assistance calling a taxi, ma'am? The deputy asked. I don't need your help. Sloane shrieked. She looked at me. Her eyes were swollen, her mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. You think you've won, don't you? You think you're so smart. I don't think I won, Sloane, I said, standing on the bottom step. Nobody won today. This is a tragedy. But it's a tragedy you wrote. She glared at me. Then, she reached into her purse. Fine. Whatever. I'm leaving. But I'm taking my jewelry. Wait, I said. What? She snapped. Open the purse. Are you kidding me? Open it, I said calmly. Or the deputy will open it for you. Sloane hesitated. Then, with a huff, she unzipped the bag. Inside, nestled between her phone and wallet, was Grandma's emerald brooch. The one that wasn't sold. The one that was worth at least $5,000. That belongs to the estate, I said. Grandma gave it to me. Sloane lied. No, she didn't. She wore it to my graduation. She hated you. She called you the noisy one. I held out my hand. Give it to me. Sloane grabbed the brooch. For a second, I thought she was going to throw it into the woods. But she looked at the deputy, then at me. She slammed the brooch into my palm. The pin scratched my skin, but I didn't flinch. I hate you, she hissed. I hope you rot in this big, empty house all by yourself. Better alone in a castle than together in a cardboard box, I replied. A yellow taxi, which the deputy had called, crunched up the driveway. The driver popped the trunk. Sloane heaved her bags in. She didn't hug Mom. She didn't look back at the house. She got in and slammed the door. I watched the taxi drive away, disappearing down the long, tree-lined road. Mom was standing in the doorway, weeping softly into a handkerchief. The deputies tipped their hats to me. "We'll file the report, Ms. Bennett," the officer said. "Call us if she comes back." "Thank you," I said. They left. I stood there for a long time. The silence returned to the estate. But this time it wasn't the silence of oppression. It was the silence of a vacuum. The storm had passed, sucking all the air out of the room, leaving just me and the wreckage. I looked at the emerald brooch in my hand. It sparkled in the sunlight. I walked back up the stairs, past my crying mother, and went into the kitchen. I picked up the trash bag Sloane had kicked 3 days ago. I tied it up. I walked it to the dumpster. Then, I went back inside and locked the door. The rest of the day was spent in a strange, fugue-like state of cleaning. I didn't call a maid service. I needed to do it myself. It was an exorcism. I started in the living room. I gathered up the pizza boxes, the empty champagne bottles, the fashion magazines Sloane had left scattered on the floor. I threw them all into heavy-duty black bags. I found the renovation plans Chad had sketched on a napkin. It showed a giant glass wall obliterating Dad's study. I ripped the napkin into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. I went to the guest room Sloane had occupied. It smelled of her perfume, overly sweet and cloying. I stripped the bed sheets. I opened the windows to let the fresh, rain-washed air in. I vacuumed until the lines in the carpet were perfect and straight. Mom stayed in her room. I brought her a tray of tea and toast at 6 p.m. She was sitting by the window, staring at the driveway. "Here, Mom," I said, setting the tray down. "Where will she go?" Mom asked, her voice raspy. "She has friends in the city," I said. "She has a degree in art history she never used. She's young. She'll figure it out. Or she won't. But that's not our problem tonight." "You've changed, Meredith," Mom said, looking at me. "You've become hard." "I became what I needed to be to keep this roof over your head," I said gently. "Eat your toast." I left her room and walked down the hall to Dad's study. I opened the door. The smell of old books and pipe tobacco greeted me. It was the same. Sloane hadn't had time to touch it. I sat down in Dad's leather chair. It creaked, a familiar, comforting sound. I placed the emerald brooch on his desk. I opened my laptop and logged into the trust account. I transferred $1,000 to a separate account, an emergency fund for Mom, just in case. I wasn't a monster. I just wasn't a doormat anymore. I felt a phantom pain in my chest. It was the loss of the sister I wanted Sloane to be. I grieved for the imaginary version of my family, the one where we laughed at dinners, where they appreciated my help, where I wasn't the bank. But then I looked around the room. I looked at the walls that were still standing. I looked at the deed, which I had framed and placed on the mantelpiece. I realized that the heaviness I felt wasn't regret. It was exhaustion. The exhaustion of holding up the sky for 10 years. And for the first time I could put my arms down. The sky hadn't fallen. The house was still standing. I woke up the next morning at sunrise. The house was silent. No loud music. No complaints about almond milk. I went to the kitchen. I made a pot of coffee, the expensive, dark roast beans I loved but stopped buying because Sloane said they were too bitter. I poured it into my favorite mug. I walked out onto the back porch. The air was cool and crisp. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, casting a golden light across the acres of land that belonged to me. I looked at the pile of rubble that used to be the gazebo. It was ugly, yes. But it was also a blank slate. "I think I'll build a greenhouse there," I said aloud to no one. "Or maybe a fire pit. Something for me." A deer stepped out of the woods at the edge of the lawn. It paused, looking at me. We stared at each other for a moment. It flicked its ears and went back to grazing. I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot, strong, and perfect. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from an unknown number. Meredith, please. I'm at a hostel. It's disgusting. Send me $500. Just for a hotel. I promise I'll pay you back. It was Sloan. I looked at the message. I thought about the 10 years of loans that were never repaid. I thought about the get out she spat at me 3 days ago. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. I was 47 years old. I was single. I had estranged my sister and terrified my mother. To the outside world, I probably looked like the villain of a fairy tale. The wicked witch in her tower. But as I watched the sun rise higher, warming the wood of the porch I paid for, on the land I saved, I didn't feel wicked. I felt free. I'm sitting here drinking my coffee, watching the sun hit the land I saved, enjoying the silence. My mother refuses to leave her room, and my sister is blocked on my phone. So, tell me, am I the monster for choosing my peace over their greed? Or did I simply give them the reality check they avoided for a decade? Thank you for watching this story. If you think I did the right thing, hit that like button. If you think I was too harsh, let me know in the comments. And please, subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice served cold. I'll see you in the next one.